Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Connie Lauer, and I'm a faculty member in the Academic Engagement Center. I will be the host of this session on the 3 C's of life learning. I am joined in hosting this session today by Sally Deckard, who is serving as a tech specialist. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for the first part of this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you to Professor Holly Ourso. Professor Ourso is an expert at expressing complex ideas using simple language and is an award-winning math educator. In her words, my students inspire me to find creative ways to facilitate student success. I start with a learner-centered classroom, throw in handfuls of clear, concise math explanations, add a generous helping of video instruction that targets key learning outcomes, include prompt personalized replies, sprinkle in some timely feedback, and stir. It's a recipe that turns students into learners. Experience in higher education, she's taught there for over 15 years. She holds a master's degree in mathematics from Louisiana State with a specialty in graph theory, where she also completed dual bachelor's degrees. She shares energy and enthusiasm with students in weekly live learning sessions for all UAGC algebra students. She authored hub pages of customized resources for UAGC math courses, which incorporate her widely watched video tutorials, many of which are freely available to anyone. In her words, the beauty of the tutorial video is that students get a detailed explanation, but never have to ask a question. Many times college students are confused about algebra, yet don't know what to ask. She passionately believes education should be available to all, and since April 2008 has created over 30 YouTube tutorial videos that target algebra concepts that typically stump students. Over 99% reported they like these videos, and they have racked up over 165,000 views. So now I'll turn it over to Holly.
Thank you so much, Connie. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to start by telling you a tale of two frogs. When I was in high school, I really didn't understand the point of having a lot of different complicated sounding Latin names for animals such as a frog. To me, a frog is a frog is a frog. At least that's what my 16-year-old self thought. And I had a lot of trouble concentrating in biology. In fact, I failed the second semester of high school biology. I really just couldn't see how this applied to me at all. So this is the type of frog that I had seen, the only type that I had ever seen when I was 16. They all pretty much looked like this. But about 8 or 9 years ago, I went on a hike with the San Diego to River Valley Conservancy, and I saw another frog. It was about a fourth the size in terms of volume of the frog that I had grown up seeing, and it looked very different. And all of a sudden, if I had been a cartoon character, there'd been like a light bulb that went off above my head. I'd be like, oh, I get it. This is why they have several different names for a frog. And it's not exact, but the frog looked a little bit like this. It was very tiny, like, you know how a newborn kitten can fit in your hand? It had that sort of feel that it was so small, it was like a miniature or a micro frog. And all of a sudden I saw, oh, that's why you need to specify the phylum, the class, the order. And all of a sudden it makes sense to me. The frogs that came to my mind, those weren't the only possibilities. So I like to start with a little audience participation. Can you relate to this? Did you ever have a concept in high school or early in college that you didn't get the point of, but you do get it now? I'd really love it if you wouldn't mind posting something about that in the chat, because I'd be able to get to know you a little bit better, and I'd love to do that. See, we have people here from Iowa, from Florida. Thank you all for joining in. North Carolina, welcome. Felicia, Molly, Rob, Sophia, of course, Sally, Clifford, and Connie. Okay, That makes sense, Sally, that a word that people used to mean one thing means something different to you. I get that. Something you just didn't see the point of, but now you do. All right, Clifford is giving a great example for a lecture from a math professor. Did not see the point of calculus. Yes, yes. And well, the English name for calculus is really a terrible word for it because the other meaning is the stuff on your teeth. In Italian, the word is analisi infinitesimale, meaning the analysis of the infinitesimal. And that's a much better term that could give people an idea of what's going on in calculus. Excellent. Yes, Sally, that is so correct. That and Molly, that until you took the theory courses, that didn't really add up for you either. Using math when you have to change units or don't have enough eggs, that can really make a difference. And Felicia, yes, the breathing when you're upset, when we're upset, it's the same physiological feeling as being excited. But because we have the negative associations and that square breathing, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4 and holding for 4. I know I'm not the only yoga teacher in this room. So that is a super example because it shortcuts that process and people can actually hold their breath when they're upset and not realize it. So by even just taking a sort of a medium deep breath, it can make a big difference. So these are some great examples to keep in mind as I go forward. So the title of this talk is the 3 C's of live learning. So first we're going to start with what is live learning? In live learning, myself and several of my colleagues here at UAGC are employing or utilizing this high impact practice. I believe Clifford is one of them, at least one. And one of the things that we do is that we meet with our students weekly to allow there to be an interchange between professor and student. Oftentimes when a student approaches the live learning session, which is held on Zoom because our students are located in many different locations, those students often, they're in a place where they're not really sure what to do, but that doesn't mean they have a list of their top 10 questions. It just means they feel like they could use some extra support. So what I always keep in mind is first the attitude towards students, that if someone is stuck, they often have the ability to succeed in the class. They're smart enough, they have the inner fortitude, they have the study skills, they have the ability to use their time management. They often have the ability to succeed, but they may need a little bit of interaction or encouragement. And one of the reasons that live learning is considered a high impact practice, as reported by George Koo and many others, is that there is a connection made between the student and the professor. So when students receive that encouragement in a timely manner and get feedback on what's going on in the class and some study strategies, it really can make a difference in terms of their performance in the class. In other words, going to a regular weekly live learning session can enhance the student's experience and make it possible for a student who may have been feeling a little stuck to move forward in the class. So advising managers tell me that when it comes to math, students put off their math courses. That instead of taking math here, many students prefer to take their math here. A fellow professor of mine once did an informal survey where she asked students, what's the most dreaded class? That's the one question on this informal survey. And by far, students found the math to be the most dreaded. It was 90, 95, 97%. It was a high percentage. It wasn't like, oh, it's 51%. It was by far the most common subject that was mentioned. And so I feel that when a subject is considered especially tough, and if students dread it, then the benefits for offering that one-to-one connection with a professor and being able to meet, to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion experience by meeting peers, other people like them, that it can be disproportionately large when students are in a live learning session in one of those courses. Maybe because a lot of times students' ideas about how other people learn math and how good they are at math, they can exaggerate others' successes and abilities at math and minimize their own. So what can happen is that the students' ideas about math can really shift just from a single live learning session. So a student is stuck And so the student encounters the professor in live learning, and they could be going in the downward spiral. Oh, I'm getting stuck on this material. I'm not sure what to do. So this is tough for me. Maybe it's too tough. I'm very busy. I have work responsibilities, a family. Maybe I don't have time to do this. Maybe I just can't succeed at this. On the other hand, when the student participates in live learning, often leaving the live learning session feeling unstuck, then the student can go on a different trajectory. The student can go, well, I'm now unstuck and I know how to proceed. Maybe I can do this. I'm able to learn and follow along when the professor helps me. So maybe I'm able to learn and follow along when I see the other help information that's in the class. And then I'm really busy and I have a lot going on, but I've succeeded in other classes. And this is part of the package of me being successful in college. And I have other plans after I succeed in college. I want to go for this. How can I find time to succeed in this? And all of a sudden, the situation is very different for that student, very different indeed. So when the student comes into live learning, one of the things I really try to make sure to have happen each time is what I call the assisted aha moment. So at stage one, this can be me explaining the subject matter material that's appropriate to the students in the session. When students first come in, the first thing I do is I find out about the student. What week are you in? Of the two classes, you could be in the introduction or the intermediate algebra class. Which one of those classes are you taking and what week are you in? And getting that little bit of back and forth allows me to know how to target what's going on for the student. And I can be sneaky. I can actually go into the course the student is taking and look and see what is this specific student stuck on. And as much as I can, I tailor the live learning session to specifically what this particular group needs. So I think of there as being 4 stages to the assisted aha moment. Stage 1 is I explain the material in a clear, concise way, and the student is able to follow what's going on. The student says, aha, thinks or feels, aha, I can learn this. And stage 2 would be where I begin to pause. And in those pauses, I put in easy blanks. Like if you were listening, you'd be able to fill in the first couple of easy blanks. And as the student is able to come up with, oh, that's -2. Oh, I think I know what to do there. Oh, that's a less than symbol. All of a sudden, the student begins to have the experience, a positive experience of learning math. And then in stage, go ahead.
Stop you just a second. Your slide is blank.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know, though, in case I wasn't aware.
Okay.
The next part of the slide comes after this story.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. I love that you're supporting me. And if I had meant for the slide to be progressing and it wasn't, I would definitely want to know. So thank you so much. In stage 3 of the assisted aha moment, then I begin to leave bigger blanks and allow people who are in the classroom, in the online classroom, to fill in a little bit here or a little bit there. And sometimes there is a stage 4 where I can say, okay, this is the type of problem, or this is the discussion prompt, or if there's a paper or an exam, these are the kinds of ideas you need to be learning. How would you approach this? We don't get to stage 4 in every live learning session. Usually it's with repeat attendees, so people who have come multiple weeks, either in a row or not in a row. But even getting a stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3 aha moment can add to the student's learning experience, because their experience in learning math may have been all negative. So think about in your own discipline, if you're not a math professor, I know some are and some aren't. Think about your majors. Is there a course or topic or topics maybe that runs throughout the sequence of courses that students tend to get stuck on? If there is, this kind of experience can be extremely beneficial. And I encourage you to cherry pick the key and most important examples. Don't necessarily think, oh, I want to have something that covers everything. When I make videos, tutorial videos, I don't try to make a video on the easiest subject that everyone understands. I mean, why should anyone watch that? Instead, I try for the toughest concepts, the ones that there are most commonly misconceptions or misunderstandings about, the ones that if students don't get this idea or this cluster of ideas, they're likely not to succeed in the course. That's where I want to focus my time and energy. The thing is that when that student is stuck, they're at a crossroads. They could go one of 2 ways. I think of it as the up and the down. But once they feel their success is possible and they feel more confident in their ability to succeed, this can result in adult learners finding the time to learn. And we often use the term andragogy to refer to adult learners. And I looked it up, and in Greek, andros means man. So I prefer the term enlikagogy, because enlikos in Greek means adult. So I feel like in these courses that are especially tough, that can block students from proceeding along the path toward completion, success, and graduation, they can be really a key part, really disproportionately valuable to students, and can more positively impact retention than in a class that, let's say, many students succeed in. So the drum roll, please. See if the next slide will come up for me. Okay. There we go. So whenever this experience, the aha moment, is one where a student didn't know a math concept and then learns and retains this concept, the student has a positive learning experience. And I think of there being a learning lasagna where there's layers of mushrooms or meat and sauce and noodles and cheese, maybe bechamel sauce. And this is a new layer that's laid atop of the learning lasagna that the student has been experiencing up to that point. And now the student will be like, oh, instead of saying, well, all my experiences learning math have been a struggle, have been negative, they now have a new experience learning the subject matter that is not negative, where they were able to be successful. And the Skinnerian view of how people behave in future situations is to look back and see how they behaved in the past situation or very similar situation. So it can be extremely impactful if a student has an experience of being successful, and it's the most recent experience. Students' attitudes toward math can be extremely ambivalent or even negative. Students will see other people and they imagine that those students learn math with no struggle, with no bumps in the road, that they're completely smooth bicycling down the sidewalk of math. And in fact, sometimes students even label themselves bad at math simply because it takes time, takes a few iterations before the material makes sense and the student is successful. When in fact, that's how everyone learns math. Think about in your own subject matter, in your own field. Are there topics where students, if they start to get it and then they don't get some parts of it, they think, oh, I'm just not able to do this, and sometimes they can give up? I know with calculus that Clifford mentioned earlier, there's a bit of an abstraction to that. And if students do not have a way out of that abstraction or a way into that abstraction that they can grip their mind around, often they just completely do not succeed in that sort of material. So maybe there's something like that in one of the subjects that you teach. So a drum roll, please, with no delay. What are the 3 C's of live learning? Well, they're connect, and clear, concise explanations. I'm not sure if that's 3 or 4. Math can be hard. There's lots of different ways to count things. So remember that when there's a question, whether it's verbalized or just one that a student holds in their head, there's always a person there inside the question, and we want to be cognizant to connect to that person. Students who attend live lectures recommend them to other students. So let's dig a little deeper into the 3 C's. The first one is to connect with students, because without a feeling of safety and connection, we know learning cannot take place. If I'm asking a student to admit that they don't know something, to reach their hand out of their canoe, the safety of their canoe, it really makes a difference with the student, whether the student is expecting to encounter the friendly nose of a dolphin or the sharp jaws of an alligator. So connecting with students is the most important thing that we do in live learning, because we are people first and professor and student second. And I try to give students encouragement and hope. And the way I do this is that I always share a quote from a student in week 5 of their course, because students come in with a certain feeling and trepidation, but they leave the course in a different mindset. So I share one quote like that with students every session. And then connecting the material to the real world. If you have only seen a parabola and you have no idea that bridges are made where parts of the bridges are parabolic in shape, or that a graph like this can link irritability in coffee drinkers who miss their morning cup to their age, I know I can remember this from growing up. My mom was a coffee drinker, that it may be that you look at the material and think, not for me. That's something that doesn't apply to me. Students who attend live lectures retain these real life applications. And here are a couple of things. I didn't ask for these comments. They were simply spontaneously posted in my last course in week 5. One student says, I'm so happy I'm studying algebra. I see how important it is. And another student says, did you notice how Holly gave us quite a few good examples over the weeks of this course about how algebra can and is used in everyday life? An adult learner with those things floating around in their brain, instead of being distracted by, when am I ever going to use this? This is too hard. Why do we even have to learn math? I'm in this other major. Instead, these things are floating around, and it allows the adult learner to more fully commit. And then the last is clear, concise explanations. If I'm looking at week 1 discussion and I'm saying, hey, what will really help students to succeed in this, the one key thing, the most important is the order of operations, then I can provide a video that concisely describes and shows several examples of how to use the order of operations. And when students have access to that, that can be very helpful. So not only are there videos available, but during the live learning session, I also present those live. So I mentioned earlier that this is a chance for students who maybe come from different backgrounds to interact and experience each other, but it is also one math student to another. I don't understand this at the beginning, and then I do. And I can see that you had that moment where you crossed the bridge to understanding as well. Also, it can be a way for students to meet others who are like-minded and experience different points of view. So we're going to stay on this slide for a few minutes, Connie, just so you know. So if a professor treats a live learning session as though it were office hours, here's my door's open, my brain is open, to quote Paul Erdos, and here I am, it may be that the student doesn't benefit at the level that they could. It may be that the student gets an off-the-cuff response when a prepared one could be more cogent and could help the student to succeed more fully. So when we teach math to elementary education teachers, we're told the way that you run your math course in the college setting is the way the elementary education teacher will run their own elementary education class. So they're not just listening to what you say, they're also looking to how you present that. And so when we're in the situation where we're presenting methods to approach how to do an essay, how to do the citations correctly, how to do research so that their points in an essay or a discussion post argument can be well supported. When we're doing that, we want to be sure that the explanations that we give a compact amount of give the information in a compact amount of time. Students who are sitting in a live learning session, imagine the student in their own home. There may be distractions, there may be other people or activities going on in the room, and there's certainly windows. And one window the student could stare out of is, well, when am I ever going to use this? One window the student can stare out of is, well, how does this apply to my real life? How does this apply to my job? And so when the student is in the treehouse, there needs to be the feeling of equanimity. Students are accepted exactly the way that they are. Students don't need to be more grammatical or type things faster or come on camera if they're not comfortable with that. Students are accepted exactly the way that they are. And that is critical for the safety is what enables the learning experience to take place. So in the treehouse, we want to go through several different options. And I hope that students leave the treehouse not the same way that they came up, maybe climbing upstairs in the trunk of the tree, maybe a little bit anxious. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know what I'm going to encounter, but feeling exuberant and enthusiastic and swinging off the rope, a rope that connects the student to the professor. And I'd like to thank the artist of the John Hilton, The Treehouse book, and Bill Amen, the author of Foxtrot Comics, for this Frankenstein image that I came up with. All right. See if I. So I'm going to go back for a moment. Okay, here we go. There is a slide that got skipped when we had the technical issue, so I'm just finding it. I saw it a minute ago. Okay, I'm just going to click out of this and come back to that slide because it breaks down what I actually do in each live learning session. I'm going to wait for the program to respond. Okay. If we do that. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and then we'll come back in and share again when the PowerPoint. Oh, I see we have new people. Hi, it's so exciting to see you. Okay. Okay, here we go. We're going to do from current slide and we're going to share screen. Okay, so each live learning session includes these elements, and they're not included in equal measure. So I'll break it down for you in terms of measurements. Yes, okay. We're going to start with only a half cup of introduction. That's when we connect with the students. So I actually start with an icebreaker and I ask students to show an item off their desk. I always use a plant from my patio. Students have shown things like a little plaque that has a saying on it. They've shown their pets, they've shown their organization systems, they've shown timers, they've shown calculators. But when I connect with the students, I'm acknowledging that we are first and foremost people and teacher and professor second. And I got this idea from Mark Knitka, who is one of the other participants in the UAGC Live Learning Research Project. We're studying to see just how effective it is. Early reports indicate that it is effective, but we'd like to be a little more specific than that. And one thing that it does is it sort of encourages a student who might be shy to come on camera to come on camera. So we first connect with an icebreaker. Then I provide hope, just a half cup of introduction, and then a teaspoon of hope. Then I go with connecting the material to the real world. I include a tablespoon or two of practical application. I provide brief real life example or examples of how your subject matter is useful. This is critical to get buy-in from the adult learner who's busy and often will not fully commit to succeed in the subject matter and master it unless they can see how it can be applied in their real life. So I provide a tablespoon or two of practical application, then a pint of how to succeed in the class. I provide best practices for student success in the class. I share strategies to shortcut the learning process. I remind students of key resources, that is tips and tricks to succeed in the class. And I cover every single resource the student might need to succeed. And this is shown on our hub page that Matt Galloway helped me to create. So a Math 222 student, for example, gets a pro tip, links to videos that describe in detail how to succeed in the class, a walkthrough video, and then for every week of the class, you can click on this and see here's the video tutorials that are applicable for that week. At the bottom, there's even an email address where you can reach myself or lead QR faculty member, Dr. Lane Andrew. So you can also, there's a connection to the professor, and I will answer questions between learning sessions. Then I remind students of key resources. So for example, if a student in your class has trouble with citations, they could be reminded of something like the Son of Citation machine. In math, there's a Desmos graphing calculator, and the student can access the graphing calculator when they're asked to graph a parabola. We saw a real life example of one of those earlier. And then the student can focus their energy on describing the graph. Where are the intercepts and what's going on with the graph? So those resources can really lower student stress around whether they can succeed in the class, and presenting tools that facilitate the student's success and coaching students to avoid common pitfalls. If you know that on your third discussion assignment or on the week 3 paper that students typically forget to do a particular part of the assignment, or they misunderstand it and they do one thing when what you really need is another, that can make a huge difference in how students respond when they get to that part, because their ears are perked up and they're on the lookout. So in short, I sum up the strategies and share key resources to provide the best opportunity to succeed in the class. And when I do this, I'm showing the student, look, I believe in your ability to succeed, and I'm going to set you up on the right, get you off on the right foot and set you up on the right path. And then lastly, the clear, concise explanations. If I do a math tutorial video or a how to succeed in the class video, and I take 6 minutes when it could be adequately covered in 3, I'm doing the student a disservice. The 3-minute video, if it's clear and covers all the pertinent issues, is more valuable. The student can learn twice as much from me in the same amount of time. So when a student is stuck and they're encountering obstacles, I always remember to be flexible. I had a student, so I'm going to dig into the subject matter content, but I'm going to customize that to the attendees. So there's 2 things I want to say. We'll say one, and then we'll go to the being flexible issue. So if most of the students in the live learning session are in week 2 or 3, I'm not going to pull out a week 4 topic, and then students are deprived of that assisted aha moment because they may not understand. On the other hand, if all my students are in weeks 4 and 5, presenting something from week 1 of the class, it's probably not that helpful. When selecting topics, I believe that preparing before the game can make the professor more effective. So before the game, I want to think about not just any concept, but what are the key concepts that are going to be used over and over and over in this class or in this course sequence toward our major. And when I focus my live learning math instruction on one of those concepts, then the student will benefit more, will receive a greater benefit. And before the game, I actually will look and see, I'll look at a student that looks like they're performing in a sort of a middle of the road kind of way. I'll look to see what are they missing, and I'll collect those problems into a file. And I did these one at a time, week by week, when I was starting out doing this. So now I have a file for early in the class, a file for middle of the class, a file for later in the class. And if I end up in a one-on-one situation, whether at the beginning or the end of the session, then I tailor it to specifically what the student is doing. I can specifically go in and read the student's bio. I can look and see what they did when they posted to the week 3 paper or the week 2 discussion, or what they did in the Alex lab. And I make sure to give the key concepts that block students from succeeding. So think about that in your own course or in your own course sequence. In math, one thing that students can be blocked by is they can't get a particular concept in the Alex lab, but they don't realize they can skip around. That's one concept out of over 100. So I show students specifically how to skip around, how to access the hub page, how to access the tools that can help them. So I envision the live learning as a treehouse, and the student climbs up those rickety stairs. They may be very anxious and unsure that they can succeed. But if the professor has prepared before the game and knows what they're going to present, doesn't expect the student to have a bunch of questions, but instead has their own agenda, after that pint of how to succeed in the class, I follow that with a gallon of live learning instruction. It's a way to really connect with students, to work through those problems together and have the assisted aha moment. But when students have questions, I crowd out my prepared plan and zoom in on exactly what the students need. And when I do that during the game, I'm present. I've taken a few minutes to get quiet and still beforehand so that I'm at my best. And then after the game, I think, well, what worked and what could I do better? One of the things that I did is I used a very lengthy real life example, and it was terrific, but it just took up too much time. I schedule my live learning sessions for 30 minutes, but as a professor, I'm available longer so that the busy learner says, oh, I can't go to an hour-long meeting, but I could get half an hour in. And many of them, the very first time, leave right at 30 minutes. That's all the time they had. But in subsequent sessions, they know that because we'll stay later, that they are able to budget more time. And once they see the value of it, I feel that if we present the best possible live learning sessions, that students will return in order to receive these benefits, and that they will they will recommend this to a friend. So they may climb up in the treehouse. So we're doing the live learning research project, and I want to share some of my other faculty colleagues who are doing this together with us, and the Office of Institutional Effectiveness will be analyzing the data for us. And so you'll hear more for us on how effective this is in 2022. I thank you so much for your kind attention and your patience with me during the small technical difficulties. I am available for questions if anyone has one.
Thank you so much, Holly. It was really wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? We're a little bit over time, but I think we could get in one or two questions.
Yeah, we sure can. This is my last for the day, so I can keep the room open. Holly, I know this would require time travel, but I wish you had been my analytical geometry teacher.
Thank you so much, Sally.
I have a question, Holly. What do you use to record your videos? Do you do those at home? You have a whiteboard?
I do them a lot of different ways. So when I first started, all I really had was a flip cam. So this was 2008 when I made my first video. You can see it if you go to my YouTube channel. It's the very first one that I ever made. And then and so what I did is I put up a whiteboard on the board, and I wrote on a physical whiteboard. I don't do it that way today. Then I began bringing my flip cam and books so I could balance it onto books into college classrooms nearby. So I'd go to a college, go into a classroom, and I'd film myself at the board. But what I've done lately, and I guess I can show that actually, is I do it. Oh no, I guess that one is at the board too. I hadn't thought about that. I guess I still have done most of these at the board. So you don't have to do it at the board. For math, there are a lot of symbols, so it helps to have something you can create those symbols in. So Screencast-O-Matic is a free way to do that. And it is functional, easy to use. I always suggest, if you've not done videos in the past, in order to prevent frustration on your part, that you first plan what you're going to say, like write it down. It sounds stupid, but write it down, because you won't know where you want to put it if you haven't seen it written down. And then, and there are other programs you can use. Jing is gone now that we don't have Flash anymore. But Screencast-O-Matic, so before you do a real one, do a test one that's just like 30 seconds. Just do your first 30 seconds or your first 5 seconds and see, did it come out? Because sometimes the sound is bizarrely muted, or there's something that's just not quite right. So once you've done that, then the other thing you can do is you can simply, and I guess I'll just show what I would do. See if we can get to out of this. I took a screenshot of the participants, so I'll be able to see that later. Okay, so one thing you can do is you can just open up a file, and then in Screencast-O-Matic, you can simply just start typing into the file. So here, if I just open a blank document, I can say, here is the math problem I want to present. And then in Screencast-O-Matic, if you want to do a quick web tour, I can tab over and show the hub page, for example, and then I can tab right back. And so I could just do whatever problem I was doing right here in the document. And of course, I might make the the type a little bit bigger. I might use this and make this a little bit larger so the students can see it. And that is a quick and easy way to do it. What I use today actually is Camtasia, because the university provided me with a copy of Camtasia. And if you're sophisticated at this, Camtasia can be a great thing to use. The other thing that I have sometimes done is to go into our Sunroad office and record them there. So for example, I did the walkthrough videos for all of the math classes. And today I use Camtasia, but back in the day before COVID, I would go in and it would be filmed and it would be professionally edited, and Virgil Simpolo or Dwayne Uas might get involved in the mix. So there are a lot of great ways to do it. The thing you want to do is just to keep it simple. You don't have to have every single thing perfect in order for the video to be good. What you basically want is a clear, concise message. It has to be of importance to students. And then I feel that, unlike someone who just gives the writing on the board, that the professor is part of the experience. So if you can, show yourself either before and then after. And another thing that a lot of people do is they just use their phone. So if I take my phone and I go to video, I can simply create a video of myself on the phone, and that is very easy to then make into something that students can access. And there's a way to make it smaller. There's a file compressor, but that's another way that videos can be made.
Okay, thank you. Now, in my mind, math is math forever and a day. So you've made all these videos, so you can continue to use them from whenever, like 2008. Do you find yourself making new videos now, or is that kind of slowed down because you covered most everything?
Well,
Because
I
it's
do
math.
make new videos now. So if you go to the my YouTube page and the playlists block, I'll put this in the chat real quick in case people have never seen this. You can kind of get inspiration by listening to other people's videos. So all you'll see is just the ones I've made. So for example, sometimes I have videos in the works, and I always, when I get to a tough concept, I'll start making a list of concepts. But for example, this is the intermediate algebra playlist, and I'm going to mute this so it does not play. I hope there will be a better thing than YouTube in the future, because they have now started adding ads, and I don't benefit from that in any way. And I feel that education should not have ads. So, but anyway, you can see that's me in my home office in 2008. I'm just drawing on a whiteboard, just very simple, but I don't have to. I could use a file, as I mentioned. So the thing is that sometimes you'll be preparing a concept for live learning, or I did a revision for a statistics course recently, and I realized that there was no way to really explain this in just 2 or 3 slides, that it was just too detailed. And so that's a great example of where I would think, hey, I want to make another video. So when I did the statistics course revision, I made another 10 course videos plus the how to succeed in the class and how to succeed in each week of the class. So another 6 videos for that. But I always have in mind, oh, I'd still like to make a video for this example in statistics or for that discussion in algebra. And so it's one of those things where, I have to block out the time to do it. But I always have in mind, because I can see, even with the video help that's available, what students are still struggling with. And that's where I want to make the video help. When I first teach a class, I actually go to the existing professors and say, what are the toughest concepts in this class? What are the concepts that the students don't get it, they're not going to succeed? And I start there. So I walk into the class on day 1, here's all the help that's in the regular class, plus I made these videos just for you. Because the other professors say, if you don't get these concepts, you're not going to succeed in the class. And I found that students will watch them. And I've, in blended classes, even heard them tell other people, you've got to watch this video.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any more questions?
So Susan asked a question in the chat. So, that's really a stylistic thing, and you may not agree with my view on it, but I think that if we acknowledge that we're people first and professor and student second, if we leave the person out, then, for example, one of my friends has a young daughter. She can't look at that video and look at me and see me as someone that she could be one day. And so we need a lot of different kinds of faces and different kinds of voices associated with expertise, rather than the traditional images that a lot of people bring to mind when they think of someone who is an expert. So I feel that even if it's something where the person shows themselves at the beginning and then cuts to adjust the stuff and then maybe cuts back at the end, even if it's not for the whole time, I personally feel that you don't want to leave the person out. Live learning is not a thing where I cut a hole in my head and dump knowledge, through the Zoom somehow into students' heads. It's one person connecting with the other. And if I can give all signs of being a dolphin and no signs of being that alligator, then a lot of times students will reach out with questions or concerns.
Okay, well, thank you, Holly, and thank you to the audience for your participation, for your attendance to today's session. We encourage you to attend more presentations and panel discussions from our committed and dedicated faculty, and enjoy the rest of TLC. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you all
everyone.
very much.
Thank you so much for doing me the honor of attending this session. It's great to see everyone.